There's always a little synchronicity in these videos and the timing, and this one stemmed from me listening and singing "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina" to my daughter by the Carpenters, which led me down the Argentina path on archive.org to try and find some ancient stuff, and I came across a book that had Lord Byron's account of the Patagonian giants. And so I'm going to save that full account for another video, but I want to read the appendix from that book where the editor describes that part in particular, and it's kind of interesting, so I just wanted to show you that. And here are a couple paintings of Lord Byron. This guy traveled all over the place. Interesting story to tell there. I'll also save that for another video, maybe do some Tartarian Tales-esque journeys of him and see where he went and see some of his adventures, because I'm sure they are significant in some really cool way. But in relation to the giants, this is a continuation from that last video, and this is pretty much the book that was mentioned during that last video as the source. So this is the editor talking about that part, and then later I'll go into Lord Byron's official account and we'll take it all into account. So here we go. Appendix. As the discovery of the gigantic race of Patagonians is one of the most curious and extraordinary particulars of this voyage, the editor imagines it will be proper here to lay before the reader what has been said by the authors of former voyages on this subject, with some remarks. Indeed, one important consequence of this voyage is the putting an end to the dispute which for 2 centuries and a half has subsisted between geographers in relation to the reality of there being a nation of people of such an amazing stature, of which the concurrent testimony of all on board the Dolphin and Tamer can now leave no room for doubt. These were seen by Magellan, whose ship was the first which visited that coast, and who in I767 discovered the straits that bear his name. But the writer of that voyage has mingled with his description of them circumstances that are equally fabulous and absurd, and that are only calculated to disguise truth in the habit of fiction. Speaking of one of these people who came on board, he says, "His bulk and stature were such as would easily allow him the character of a giant. The head of one of our middle-sized men reached but to his waist, and he was proportionably big." So far was without doubt strictly true, but he proceeds. His body was formidably painted, especially his face, a stag's horn being drawn upon each cheek, and great circles about his eyes. His color was otherwise mostly yellow, only his hair was white. For his apparel, he had the skin of a beast clumsily sewed together, but a beast as strange as he that wore it, neither mule, horse, nor camel, but something of each, the ears of the first, the tail of the second, and the shape and body of the last. It was an entire suit, all of one piece from head to foot. The arms he brought with him were a stout bow and arrows. The string of the former was a gut or sinew of that monstrous beast, and the latter, instead of iron heads, were tipped with sharp stones. The admiral made him eat and drink, and he seemed to enjoy himself very comfortably, till casting his eyes on a great-looking glass, he was in such a fright that starting back he threw a couple of men that stood by him to the ground. However, he fared so well that we had soon the company of more, and the admiral being desirous of making some of these gigantic people prisoners, his crew filled their hands with toys that pleased them, and in the meantime put iron shackles on their legs, which they thought were very fine playthings, and were pleased with their jingling sound, till they found how they were hampered and betrayed. But then they fell a bellowing like bulls, and in that extremity implored the help of Setebos. One alone tried the utmost force of 9 men that were employed to master him, and though they had him down and bound his hands tightly, yet he freed himself from his bonds and got loose in spite of all their endeavors to hold him. Their appetite is proportionable to their strength, for one of them eat up a whole basket of ship biscuit at a meal, and they eat their flesh raw. They have no fixed habitations, but certain movable cottages. We are here to remark that it was impossible the author should know their language, and yet he asserts that they report strange things of horrid forms and appearances frequently seen amongst them, of horned demons with long shaggy hair, throwing out fire both before and behind. Their pretended practice of physic is equally absurd and ridiculous. This he represents as consisting only of bleeding and vomiting, the former by giving a good chop with an edge tool in the part affected, whether the leg, arm, or face, and that to procure a vomit, they thrust an arrow a foot and a half down their throats, which circumstances must undoubtedly destroy the credit of his narration, though in other particulars it was true and accurate. These people are afterwards mentioned by Sir Thomas Cavendish, who seems to have seen them only at a distance, and to have judged of their stature by the print of their feet in the sand, for having observed that they killed 2 of his people with their arrows. He says they seemed of a gigantic race, the measure of one of their feet being 18 inches in length. Hence he gave this country the name of Patagonia, by which he meant to signify that the people were 5 cubits and a half high. The public were afterwards informed by the writer of Admiral Van Noort's voyage made in I-598 that they learned from an Indian boy whom they carried away with them from the Straits of Magellan and taught him Dutch, that the country was inhabited by 4 tribes, 3 of which were of the ordinary size, but the 4th were 10 or 12 feet high. This is indeed only the testimony of a boy, but in the account of a voyage made the same year by the Dutch captain Sabal de Weert, this boy's testimony was confirmed, for that captain says he found 7 canoes in the Straits of Magellan, in which were savages of a reddish color and long hair, who appeared to be 10 or 11 feet high. Those people were likewise mentioned by Admiral Spilbergen, who sailed through the Straits of Magellan in the year 1614, I-614, and observes that they one day saw a man on shore who first climbed one hill and then another to look at the fleet, and at last came to the seaside for the same purpose, so that he was seen by all on board, who unanimously concluded that he was taller than these people had been represented by the author of Magellan's Voyage. The last author who mentions these Patagonians is Captain Shelvocke, who in his account of his voyage round the world in 1719, describing the island of Chilo, which is opposite the coast of Chile, in the 43rd degree 4th latitude, says, "The generality of the people are of the ordinary stature, but that according to Mons Frazier in the inland part of the continent, there is a race of an extraordinary size, and that he was credibly informed by several who had been eyewitnesses that some were about 9 or 10 feet high." In short, this voyage has effectually established the testimony of these authors with respect to the size of the Patagonians, which we would consider separately from the other circumstances they have mentioned, that appear to be merely fanciful. What use divines may make of this, we know not, but it certainly proves what is recorded in Scripture, and even in heathen authors, that there was, and still is, a race of giants. And there very well could still be. So this leaves me to the absolute necessity of getting and finding some of those other accounts. So there will be more videos of these giants, and I will definitely find some of them and read them out here in this little segment. And so these things, these giants, there really is something amazing, you know, because not only were they in Patagonia, but the other day my parents went to Egypt a couple years ago, and I was looking at some of their photo albums, and it's just impossible to conceive that any human our size could create those sculptures, those buildings, those structures, from the pyramids to just the sculptures that exist everywhere of the gigantic animals, the human-animal hybrids. Those things have got to have been created by giants. There's just absolutely no other way that humans, no matter how many slaves you have, could do that. It's not possible. And all these amazing buildings that we see, and with these huge blocks, you know, like we see bricks, and they make sense. We can make those. We can easily build those like Legos. It makes sense. You can dry them out in the sun. You can see how that works. But those stones all over the place, like in Lebanon, the Temple of Jupiter, are just all over the place. The pyramids, Egypt, everywhere. Those stones could not be done by human means in times without technology. And maybe there was amazing technology that did it. They figured out sound, ether, kind of methods like that, free energy systems. I do believe that, but I don't believe that humans our size did it. Still, even with that kind of technology, I don't think it's possible for people our size. There had to be giants. There's absolutely not a chance that there wasn't in our history. Even just look at all these books that you see. Why would a human our size make a book like that? Especially a library that exists in Europe. I forget where. But there was probably a lot of these, and I'm sure the Smithsonian has way more. The bones, the skeletons of the giants, it all goes to one source and makes it on the internet just enough so people can be like, ah, that's photoshopped, that's doctored, oh, that's baloney, because there's nothing, we don't hear anything about that in our school or on the Discovery Channel. Bill Nye's never mentioned giants. But look at this stuff. Like this footage right here, I think might really be true footage of one of the last remaining giants. And I'd like to see this whole movie to see if he's in any other scenes. But I mean, the neck muscles, the body, that's totally unique. You can't make that like out of clay or out of something. That looks like someone. And what was his mother like? He definitely came from someone. There were probably races like this all over. Beyond the poles, they are probably still there. They probably built the giant wall that keeps us in, if there is one. Or who knows, maybe they're part of the race that keeps us in here and has deals with the people that control us. We never know. But they are real. They were real. Whether they're still alive, I still believe so. But it's good to acknowledge this stuff, and let's keep digging for some text and see what we can find. Hope you all enjoyed this. Bless you all.